Every week I host a 1-hour webinar for small business people and alumni of mine all over the United States, and we post an edited version on our YouTube page. This week's webinar was really cool because it was done at the beginning of the year, and we talked about where to invest in the coming year. So we talk about basic stuff, sort of risky stuff, and stuff that's just kind of crazy and you should never do. So if you're interested in increasing your income or your wealth, I think this is a webinar you'll find very helpful. We're all selling all the time. We are. People just, they don't think so. They don't want to think so. They don't want to believe that they are, but it's true. We're all selling all the time, and we all want to put our best foot forward, so to speak, and we all want the best result that we can get. And when I was hired out of college, I went to work for the Procter & Gamble company as a professional salesman. I was 23 years old. And one of the things I learned early on in my career is there's a lot of stigma around the idea of selling, just generally speaking. You know, people kind of get up against the title of salesman, saleswoman, salesperson, whatever your thing is. And I'm really not going to touch on that today. That's everybody's own opinion of themselves. I just want to say one more time, we're all selling all the time. And that's one of the reasons that I want to do this talk today. Okay. So I've got some notes for you I'll put up at the end, but to keep you engaged, I'm going to ask you just to make your own notes. Okay. And I'll speak the titles fairly slowly so you can write them down, and then you can take notes as needed. Okay. So the first note that I have about selling is what I call find me, F-I-N-D-M-E. So what does that mean? Well, what that means is this. If you're going to sell something to someone, the first thing you have to do is to find the someone, the prospect, and convert them to a customer. Now, this is in more of a classic business sense, obviously. But in a very general sense, if you step up on that tall ladder and look down, what you see is that under the banner of selling, there's really two general categories of salesperson. One is inside sales and one is outside sales. So let's talk about inside sales quickly first, because I know a lot of guys don't do that. So the most common example of inside sales is retail. You need something, you go buy it. You go to a store, you interact with a human salesperson, and if you guys make a deal, you give them money, they give you the stuff. That's how it works, okay? And here's the first thing I think that's really important to remember when you're in the inside salesperson position. Customers don't walk into your store just looking. Now, don't take that as a 100% absolute, but it's about a 90+% absolute. People are just too busy, okay? People don't go to Nordstrom just to kind of wander through the shoe section and see what's available today. People go to Nordstrom and walk into the shoe section because they need or want a pair of shoes, obviously. And how many times have you been in just a atypical inside sales retail situation where you're wandering around looking at stuff and the salesperson approaches you and they say, how can I help you? And your answer is those infamous two words, just looking. Okay. No, you're not. You're there because there's a reason that you're there. And inside salespeople need to remember that when someone walks into your place of business to buy something, and a lot of guys are real estate people. What if they just wander into your office? They're probably not just interested in, what are comps on Main Street doing this month? They're wandering in because they have an interest in real estate. And that is an opportunity for you to begin what I call the first link in the chain of the sale. And I'll talk about this analogy some more as we go along. And I didn't make this up. I got the analogy of the link in a chain in a sale from a great little sales book called The Rainmaker by Jeffrey J. Fox. It's a terrific little book. And I think that this analogy of a sale being a chain is very apropos because a sale is actually consummated link by link by link. Okay. So the first link in an inside sales is that a customer shows up because they have an interest in what you're selling, right? So let's talk next about outside sales, all right? How do you find me? How do you find the customer? Well, this is what separates, the girls from the women, the men from the boys, is how full you can keep your pipeline, okay? And what I'm not going to do today is go, do this technique, that technique, the other technique. What I'm just going to say is this. I've read the stats, and I've read them more than once. If you are an outside salesperson looking for new customers, the most effective use of your time is telephone cold calling. That will get you the highest conversion rate. You think about it, there's basically 3 ways outside salespeople find customers, okay? Cold calling is one of them. Some kind of direct drip email is another one of them, okay? And then the physical, like the knocking on doors, is another one of them, where you're physically going out. Now, physically going out takes the most amount of energy. Sending an email or postcard takes the least amount of energy, and a telephone call is somewhere in the middle. But if you're looking for the most effective way to procure new business as an outside salesperson, the stats are in, and the answer is you want to be on the phone, okay? All right, so that's the first thing, is what I call find me, all right? The second thing is what I call wear the roses, W-E-A-R, wear the roses. And wear the roses is a euphemism that kind of euphemizes another euphemism called wearing the rose-colored glasses. So here's my point. When you get up in the morning and get ready to go take on your day, and you're going to go out and take on your day in the form of a professional salesperson's position, here's the first thing that you really need to remember. Nobody gives a shit about you. They don't. Not that they hate you or don't like you, but they care more about themselves. And what that means is, don't show up and go, oh, this day sucks. My wife just left me, or my dog died, or I'm sick, or whatever my problem du jour is. The customer doesn't care. The customer cares about the customer. So whatever you need to do to get yourself, as Tony Robbins would say, in state before you make that presentation, you need to learn that about yourself. And you need to learn to do that. It's very, very important. When I was working for Procter & Gamble, we had a quota. I think it was like 10 or 12 calls a day because we had to drive around. I was in Metro Denver at the time. And, my trainer was very astute, and he taught me, he said, before you walk in to go say hello and pitch this customer, you got to do what you need to do to make sure that you're really on your A game and you're in a good mood, you look right, your hair is combed, and you present yourself as somebody who someone else would be attracted to. It's really important, okay? So again, wear the roses. Okay, number 3. 3 words. Find my pain. P-A-I-N, pain. Your job as a salesperson, if you just kind of want to summarize it into really simple terms, is the following: to solve a problem for someone that they cannot solve on their own. That's what you do. So, Tom, if someone says, I want to buy a condo in Park City, if they could do it on their own and save themselves a bucket of money not paying you, they would do it. And some people do, as we all know. But most people don't have the market knowledge, the form knowledge, the golden handshakes, all the things that it takes to go from, hi, how are you, to here's the keys. All right? And that's why people hire you. Okay. So the frame that I use on this is you have to find people's pain. You've got to find not what's right, but what's wrong so that you can be the doctor that sells them the medicine. Okay, and I'm going to talk about this more in a minute, but let me just kind of take a quick sidebar right now while we're on this. I've done a lot of this in my life and talked to a lot of people and been to a lot of places and just, this whole life that I've lived. And one of the things that I've learned that's very interesting is that most of us still believe that the human experience is more cerebral than it is emotional. And that is just not true. That is just not true at all. And so this idea of being effective at sales really means that you are in tune to the emotional state of the customer, where they're at, where you're at, and how you can enhance their emotional state. Okay. We all make decisions in two steps. And if you've been to my negotiation class or stuff that I've done this before, here's what it is. Everybody does this. There are no exceptions. This is the software of human decision making. We all decide emotionally and we justify rationally. And I don't care if you're buying Wrigley's Spearmint Gum or looking for the person that you're going to make children with. It doesn't matter. It's all the same. So learning how to dial into someone's emotional state really is a separator between the good and the great salespeople. Okay. Number 4. Practice makes you rich. I could tell you right now, everybody who's here, less than 10% of you on a regular basis practice your pitch. Less than 10% of you, maybe none of you, because I've been doing this for so long, I just know. That's the statistics. Okay. And the old saying goes, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. All right. So the subtitle of that little euphemism is, if you want a different result, you have to change. And I would argue that one of the most important changes that any salesperson can make is learning how to perfect their pitch. Now, what's most common in the real estate industry, as I understand it, is lots of people are out there talking about making your listing pitch, and that's fine. That's good. But everything is a pitch and an offer. Everything. Okay, I'm not talking about the offer right now, but I'm talking about the pitch. And scheduling, 15, 20, 30 minutes a week consistently without this damn thing in front of you, and you sit in a room and look at a mirror, or you stare at your camera and videotape yourself, or you find a colleague and you pitch back and forth, whatever you do, practicing your pitch it's everything. You have to practice how you're going to present what you're doing to another human being. And what happens is, and this shouldn't come as a great surprise, but what happens for a lot of people is that, the first time they do this, especially on video, they kind of freak out. Like, oh no, that's not me. Or, oh, I look terrible, or whatever your self-judgment is. Well, you got some work to do, I guess, if that's your self-judgment. Okay. And I think most of us, except for Mercedes, are all over 25 years of age. Kidding. And so, various people have various issues with how they look and that kind of thing. I've told you guys before, I'm 62. I don't look like I was 25. That's just, life. But how you look, how you sound, your timbre, your intonation, your syntax, all that stuff, you should know that about yourself. And these little things can help you do that. Okay. It's just a question of your own bravery. But if you want to get rich, you have to practice. Okay. Number 5. Listen to hear, not to respond. Listen to hear, not to respond. I've talked about this before, so this is a small repeat. Everybody gets it that listening skills are really important. We all know that, okay? To me, it really comes down to a definition. And I define listening this way. You have listened to someone when they know that you understand their position. It's very simple. You have listened when the other person knows that you understand their position. So listening is not about the number of ears and mouths and stuff that you have at all. Listening is about conveying to the other person that you get where they're coming from. And that does not mean you have to agree. What it does mean is that you have to acknowledge. One of my favorite quotes from one of my favorite authors, I told you last week, is a guy named Stephen Covey. And his quote is, "The greatest hunger of the human soul is to be understood." Once I learned this and started using it, not in sales context, but in other contexts, especially if I was having a disagreement with someone, it was just weird how well it worked. I just melted away the bad feelings and animosity and, whatever else is going on. People just want to be understood. And so really, that is, to me, step 1 of sound human communication, just telling them, I get where you're coming from. Even if you 100% disagree with them, just tell them you get it and go from there. And the rest of the road is a lot shorter and a lot easier than if you don't. A long time ago, in a land far, far away, a man lived in his mother's basement. All day and all night long, he would write outros and calls to action for his social media videos. He did this for one reason and one reason only, so it felt like his life had purpose and meaning, and he wasn't such a loser. Can you help him out? So listen to hear, not to respond. Okay, so these next 3 I'm going to talk about are pretty important. Well, they're all important, but I think these next 3 really have a special place. So the first one is sell the money. Okay? And if you want to put a parens in there, monetize benefits. See, there are really 2 things that drive most of us more than anything else. And I've studied this for a long time. And those 2 things are time and money. It's the 2 battles we're always fighting every day. And we're always trying to find more of each. More time, more money. Well, I'm going to set the time thing aside for a second and talk to you about selling the money and monetizing benefits, okay? So here's a little example. This is going to be in this week's blog. So a contractor walks into a paint store and he's looking at different paints, okay? This is just kind of an exaggerated example to make the point. So there's 2 gallons of paint. One of them is $50. The other one's $100. Now, I'm going to come back to this example in a second, but for now, monetizing the benefits, the good salesman would probe as the amount of time it would take to do the job. And a good salesperson knows his or her product and should know that the $100 gallon of paint only requires 1 coat, whereas the $50 gallon might require 2. And if it requires 2 coats, it also requires twice the labor. If your labor cost is $200 a coat, well, you just saved yourself $100 by spending $50 more and saving $200 on the labor. All right. So that's a very simple example of monetizing the benefits. Okay, now here's another example, and I'm just making this up on the fly, so sorry if my math isn't right. But let's say that you're selling somebody a house and you establish that they're looking at this way. They're looking at two houses, okay? And one of them is 5 minutes away from work and one of them is 30 minutes away from work. All right? So each day that means that to go back and forth from house A requires 10 minutes and from house B requires 60. Okay? If you currently make $200,000 a year, what that means is you make $100 an hour. Okay? Because there's 2,000 working hours in a year. So you can take that math and stretch it out as far as you want and show the prospective buyer how much money they're saving because of the time they're saving by buying house A instead of house B. Okay? There's a million different examples, but the point remains the point. You have to learn how to monetize the benefits, and sometimes you sell the money. Okay, the next thing, sell the future. This is a really important one. Selling is really a future state of being. You're not selling right now. You're not selling yesterday. You're selling how the customer's life is going to hopefully be better in the future. And what that means is you need to frame it that way. Because most of the time, that customer is already doing that. And you've done it too when you've been a customer. You're thinking forward. Let's say you're buying a car. At least me. You're thinking forward and you're going, oh, well, okay, what's the cost of repairs of buying a car with 200,000 miles versus a car with 20,000 miles? Okay, things like that. I'm looking into the future. I'm anticipating what my lot in life is going to be, not right in this moment, but 6 months, a year, 5 years from now. And that's what selling is. You're selling somebody a different future. And that's how you frame it. Okay. Next one. The price versus cost conundrum. This is so powerful, especially if you sell items. Most buyers focus on the price and not on the cost. Think about that for a second. Most buyers focus on the price and not the cost. The price is what you pay to acquire something. The cost is what you pay to own it. Now, if you're selling durability, long-term wear and tear, things of this nature, then a part of your homework as a salesperson is to be able to look at the actual cost of ownership of your product versus the competitor's product. So one of the businesses that I own is a sewing business, believe it or not. Now, some of you have heard of this, some of you hadn't. But we make like capes and aprons and smocks and stuff for beauty schools, beauty salons, women's healthcare providers. That's kind of our niche. And when I got involved in this, one of the first things that I was asking myself was the question I should have been asking myself, and that is, why would customers buy our stuff instead of somebody else's? Especially since ours is a lot more expensive. Well, then I hired a professional laundry service and we did wash testing, and it took a while. But what I figured out, and I can prove it, is that, like, for example, our apron with proper laundering lasts about 5 times longer than the competitors. So if my apron's $30 and the competitors is 10, they're going to buy 5 of those over the typical lifespan of what of mine. Okay. So what am I selling? I'm selling the cost of ownership and not the price. The customer will pay more up front, 3 times more, but they'll save 2 times the cost of the competitor item by buying mine over the competition. It's a very simple example of selling the cost instead of the price. And when I've gone in and sold institutional clients, that's basically all I have to do, because they're bottom line oriented. Sure, it's like, we're American made, we're B2B, we embroider, we use great fabric, all the stuff that you say. But really the close is, it's cheaper to own my stuff than the competitors, and here's why. And when I'm dealing with a purchasing agent who's got to manage a budget and has a boss and all that kind of thing, typically a CFO, I'm giving them food to sell my stuff to their boss, and it works pretty much every time. I'm not going to say every time, but pretty much every time. So establish the difference between the price of acquisition and the cost of ownership over time. If you can do that successfully, very powerful. Next one, features and benefits. Next week, I'm teaching real negotiation. And this is one thing that everybody says, that was so powerful, because it is. So the feature is the what, and the benefit is the what's in it for me. The feature is the what, the benefit is the what's in it for me. I'll give you a couple of examples. This house has air conditioning. That's a feature. The benefit is you'll be living at 72 degrees when it's 172 degrees outside. This house has an excellent school district. That's the feature. The benefit is all your children will be going to Harvard. Well, just kidding. But you see my point. Okay, they get a great education. To go back to my sewing business, a feature would be we buy a specialty domestic nylon that is military grade, and my company and the U.S. Army are the two biggest purchasers of this product. That's a feature. Okay. What's the benefit to the customer? Because of the way that the weave and the coating is applied to it, it keeps you cooler in a salon under hot lights, especially if you're in the South, than any other competing product. Okay, so feature, benefit, feature, benefit, feature, benefit. And in my experience, here's how most people who've never really learned how to do this end up doing it. Feature, 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 stop. They don't tie the benefit to the feature. Now, the benefit is the hard part, because benefits, especially the way humans react to them, are core. They're deep drivers. Okay, so when you do the benefit statement, you really have to think about this. So I might say, hire me because I'm a great negotiator. What does that mean to the other person? How can that help them? I can get you a better outcome. I can save you money. Blah, blah, blah. Okay. So if you have a hard time with benefits, I'm going to give you two that work almost every time. Almost. Save time, save money. If you can take what you're selling, the feature or features of it, and link that to how it's going to save the customer time and or money, that's a winning combination. And I'll really expand on this in the book and talk more about how you build these things and so forth. But for now, just think about the feature is the what, and the benefit is the what's in it for me. Very, very important. Okay. Number 10. Don't lose me. Don't lose me. So what does that mean? Well, it means two things. The first thing it means is, as you're going through the sales process, follow up, follow up, follow up, follow up, follow up. More sales have been lost, and I've been guilty of this too, by not doing simple follow up. Now, let me just circle back for a minute to find me, number one, and using cold calling being the most effective way to do that. And I've hired lots of cold callers, and I've done lots of cold calling in my life. I'll do some more today, actually. Cold calling is what I call interruption marketing. It's actually a term I got from another author named Seth Godin, who you may have heard of, way more famous than me. And it's really true, because when you're cold calling somebody, you're asking them to stop everything they're doing in their day and pay attention to you. And people, they're not planning on that. They're dodging their own bullets and arrows. And who are you and what do you want? And why should I give you my attention? Okay. So maybe right now it's not the right time. Maybe later would be. So you note them for a follow-up again and again and again, not to be a nuisance, but to stay front of mind. And the second reason that you do this is because maybe today what you're selling them is not what they need, but a month from now, 6 months from now, or a year from now, it might be. It's happened to me many, many, many times. And so we do a lot of what we call drip marketing. Okay. We're not there to sell you something. We're there just to stay in front of you. So when you're ready to buy something, you'll buy from us or from me. Don't lose me. It's very important. I've worked with lots of people over the years managing their CRMs, you know, the touching, high touch, all that stuff that, you know, all the people talk about. It's not complicated. You have to have something worthwhile to say, and you have to be consistent about it. You know, my old girlfriend, when she bought a condo, the only reason she bought the condo from the realtor she did is because that realtor sent her a newsletter every month. She used to talk about it every month. Oh, we got the newsletter today. Oh, here's what's going on the market. She was so excited. She felt so included. She felt special. Well, eventually that turned into like a $40,000 paycheck for that broker. And all it was just being consistent. Okay. Now, one other little subset of this, and I'll talk more about this in the blog this week. It's a metric they'll use in sales called CAC. You might want to write that down. CAC, which is customer acquisition cost. CAC is a sunk cost, SUNK. So what that means is once you pay the money, you don't get it back. So if you send out, I'll just use simple numbers, $10,000 worth of flyers to 1,000 people, and you get 10 customers out of it, the CAC for each customer is $1,000. Don't lose that. Don't lose that investment. You spent that money. Now put them on a campaign just to stay in touch with them. It'll pay you back every time. It will, promise. At J Still Sewing, we build high-quality, custom-branded, American-made apparel for the beauty and medical industries. You can learn more at jstill.com.